The fight around the body of Patroclus. Brave Menelaus, son of Atreus, now came to know that Patroclus had fallen, and made his way through the front ranks, clad in full armour, to bestride him. As a cow stands lowing over her first calf, even so did yellow-haired Menelaus bestride Patroclus. He held his round shield and his spear in front of him, resolute to kill any who should dare face him. But the son of Panthous had also noted the body, and came up to Menelaus, saying, "Menelaus, son of Atreus, draw back, leave the body, and let the blood-stained spoils be. I was first of the Trojans and their brave allies to drive my spear into Patroclus. Let me, therefore, have my full glory among the Trojans, or I will take aim and kill you." To this Menelaus answered in great anger, "By Father Jove, boasting is an ill thing. The pard is not more bold, nor the leopard, nor savage wild boar, which is fiercest and most dauntless of all creatures, than are the proud sons of Panthous. Yet Hyperenor did not see out the days of his youth, when he made light of me and withstood me, deeming me the meanest soldier among the Danaans. His own feet never bore him back to gladden his wife and parents. Even so shall I make an end of you too, if you withstand me. Get you back into the crowd, and do not face me, or it shall be worse for you. Even a fool may be wise after the event." Euphorbus would not listen, and said, "Now indeed, Menelaus, you shall pay for the death of my brother, over whom you vaunted, and whose wife you widowed in her bridal chamber, while you brought grief unspeakable on his parents. I shall comfort these poor people if I bring your head and armour and place them in the hands of Panthous and noble Phrontis. The time is come when this matter shall be fought out and settled, for me or against me." As he spoke, he struck Menelaus full on the shield, but the spear did not go through, for the shield turned its point. Menelaus then took aim, praying to Father Jove as he did so. Euphorbus was drawing back, and Menelaus struck him about the roots of his throat, leaning his whole weight on the spear so as to drive it home. The point went clean through his neck, and his armour rang rattling round him as he fell heavily to the ground. His hair, which was like that of the Graces, and his locks so deftly bound in bands of silver and gold, were all but drabbled with blood. As one who has grown a fine young olive tree in a clear space, where there is abundance of water. The plant is full of promise, and though the winds beat upon it from every quarter, it puts forth its white blossoms till the blasts of some fierce hurricane sweep down upon it and level it with the ground. Even so did Menelaus strip the fair youth Euphorbus of his armour after he had slain him. Or as some fierce lion upon the mountains, in the pride of his strength, fastens on the finest heifer in a herd as it is feeding. First he breaks her neck with his strong jaws, and then gorges on her blood and entrails. Dogs and shepherds raise a hue and cry against him, but they stand aloof and will not come close to him, for they are pale with fear. Even so, no one had the courage to face valiant Menelaus. The son of Atreus would have then carried off the armour of the son of Panthous with ease, had not Phoebus Apollo been angry, and in the guise of Mentes, chief of the Sicons, incited Hector to attack him. "Hector," said he, "you are now going after the horses of the noble son of Asius, but you will not take them. They cannot be kept in hand and driven by mortal man, save only by Achilles, who is son of an immortal mother. Meanwhile, Menelaus, son of Atreus, has bestridden the body of Patroclus and killed the noblest of the Trojans, Euphorbus, son of Panthous, so that he can fight no more." The god then went back into the toil and turmoil, but the soul of Hector was darkened with a cloud of grief. He looked along the ranks and saw Euphorbus lying on the ground, with the blood still flowing from his wound, and Menelaus stripping him of his armour. On this he made his way to the front like a flame of fire, clad in his gleaming armour, and crying with a loud voice. When the son of Atreus heard him, he said to himself in his dismay, "Alas, what shall I do? I may not let the Trojans take the armour of Patroclus, who has fallen fighting on my behalf, lest some Danaan who sees me should cry shame upon me. Still, if for my honour's sake I fight Hector and the Trojans single-handed, they will prove too many for me, for Hector is bringing them up in force. Why, however, should I thus hesitate? When a man fights in despite of heaven with one whom a god befriends, he will soon rue it. Let no Danaan think ill of me if I give place to Hector, for the hand of heaven is with him. Yet if I could find Ajax, the two of us would fight Hector in heaven too, if we might only save the body of Patroclus for Achilles, son of Peleus. This of many evils would be the least." While he was thus in two minds, the Trojans came up to him, and Hector at their head. He therefore drew back and left the body, turning about like some bearded lion who is being chased by dogs and men from a stockyard with spears and hue and cry, whereon he is daunted and slinks sulkily off. Even so did Menelaus, son of Atreus, turn and leave the body of Patroclus. When among the body of his men he looked around for mighty Ajax, son of Telamon, and presently saw him on the extreme left of the fight, cheering on his men and exhorting them to keep on fighting, for Phoebus Apollo had spread a great panic among them. He ran up to him and said, "Ajax, my good friend, come with me at once to dead Patroclus, if so be that we may take the body to Achilles. As for his armour, Hector already has it." These words stirred the heart of Ajax, and he made his way among the front ranks, Menelaus going with him. Hector had stripped Patroclus of his armour, and was dragging him away to cut off his head and take the body to fling before the dogs of Troy. But Ajax came up with his shield like wall before him, on which Hector withdrew under shelter of his men, and sprang onto his chariot, giving the armour over to the Trojans to take to the city as a great trophy for himself. Ajax therefore covered the body of Patroclus with his broad shield, and bestrode him, as a lion stands over his whelps if hunters have come upon him in a forest when he is with his little ones. In the pride and fierceness of his strength he draws his knit brows down till they cover his eyes. Even so did Ajax bestride the body of Patroclus, and by his side stood Menelaus, son of Atreus, nursing great sorrow in his heart. Then Glaucus, son of Hippolochus, looked fiercely at Hector and rebuked him sternly. "Hector," said he, "you make a brave show, but in fight you are sadly wanting. A runaway like yourself has no claim to so great a reputation. Think how you may now save your town and citadel by the hands of your own people, born in Ilias, for you will get no Lycians to fight for you, seeing what thanks they have had for their incessant hardships. Are you likely, sir, to do anything to help a man of less note, after leaving Sarpedon, who was at once your guest and comrade in arms, to be the spoil and prey of the Danaans? So long as he lived, he did good service both to your city and yourself, yet you have no stomach to save his body from the dogs. If the Lycians will listen to me, they will go home and leave Troy to its fate. If the Trojans had any of that daring, fearless spirit which lays hold of men who are fighting for their country and harassing those who would attack it, we would soon bear off Patroclus into Ilias. Could we get this dead man away and bring him into the city of Priam, the Argives would readily give up the armour of Sarpedon, and we could get his body to boot. For he whose squire has now been killed is the foremost man at the ships of the Achaeans, he and his close fighting followers. Nevertheless you dared not make a stand against Ajax, nor face him eye to eye, with battle all around you, for he is a braver man than you are." Hector scowled at him and answered, "Glaucus, you should know better. I have held you so far as a man of more understanding than any in all Lycia, but now I despise you for saying that I am afraid of Ajax. I fear neither battle nor the din of chariots, but Jove's will is stronger than ours. Jove at one time makes even a strong man draw back and snatches victory from his grasp, while at another he will set him on to fight. Come hither then, my friend. Stand by me, and see indeed whether I shall play the coward the whole day through, as you say, or whether I shall not stay some even of the boldest Danaans from fighting round the body of Patroclus." As he spoke he called loudly on the Trojans, saying, "Trojans, Lycians, and Dardanians, fighters in close combat, be men, my friends, and fight might and main, while I put on the goodly armour of Achilles, which I took when I killed Patroclus." With this Hector left the fight, and ran full speed after his men, who were taking the armour of Achilles to Troy, but had not yet got far. Standing for a while apart from the woeful fight, he changed his armour. His own he sent to the strong city of Ilias and to the Trojans, while he put on the immortal armour of the son of Peleus, which the gods had given to Peleus, who in his age gave it to his son. But the son did not grow old in his father's armour. When Jove, lord of the storm cloud, saw Hector standing aloof and arming himself in the armour of the son of Peleus, he wagged his head and muttered to himself, saying, Ah, poor wretch, you arm in the armour of a hero, before whom many another trembles, and you reck nothing of the doom that is already close upon you. You have killed his comrade, so brave and strong, but it was not well that you should strip the armour from his head and shoulders. I do indeed endow you with great might now, but as against this you shall not return from battle to lay the armour of the son of Peleus before Andromache." The son of Saturn bowed his portentous brows, and Hector fitted the armour to his body, while terrible Mars entered into him, and filled his whole body with might and valour. With a shout he strode in among the allies, and his armour flashed about him so that he seemed to all of them like the great son of Peleus himself. He went about among them and cheered them on. Mestheles, Glaucus, Medon, Thessalocus, Astiopaeus, Dacenor, and Hippothous, Phorcus, Chromius, and Anomus the augur. All these did he exhort, saying, "Hear me, allies from other cities, who are here in your thousands. It was not in order to have a crowd about me that I called you hither, each from his several city, but that with heart and soul you might defend the wives and little ones of the Trojans from the fierce Achaeans. For this I do oppress my people with your food and the presents that make you rich. Therefore turn and charge at the foe, to stand or fall, as is the game of war. Whoever shall bring Patroclus, dead though he be, into the hands of the Trojans, and shall make Ajax give way before him, I will give him 1/2 of the spoils, while I keep the other. He will thus share like honour with myself." When he had thus spoken, they charged full weight upon the Danaans, with their spears held out before them, and the hopes of each ran high that he should force Ajax, son of Telamon, to yield up the body. Fools that they were, for he was about to take the lives of many. Then Ajax said to Menelaus, "My good friend Menelaus, you and I shall hardly come out of this fight alive. I am less concerned for the body of Patroclus, who will shortly become meat for the dogs and vultures of Troy, than for the safety of my own head and yours. Hector has wrapped us round in a storm of battle from every quarter, and our destruction seems now certain. Call then upon the princes of the Danaans, if there is any one who can hear us." Menelaus did as he said, and shouted to the Danaans for help at the top of his voice. "My friends," he cried, "princes and counsellors of the Argives, all you who with Agamemnon and Menelaus drink at the public costs, and give orders each to his own people, as Jove vouchsafes him power and glory, the fight is so thick about me that I cannot distinguish you severally. Come on, therefore, every man unbidden, and think it shame that Patroclus should become meat and morsel for Trojan hounds." Fleet Ajax, son of Oileus, heard him, and was first to force his way through the fight and run to help him. Next came Idomeneus and Meriones, his esquire, peer of murderous Mars. As for the others that came into the fight after these, who of his own self could name them? The Trojans, with Hector at their head, charged in a body. As a great wave that comes thundering in at the mouth of some heaven-born river, and the rocks that jut into the sea ring with the roar of the breakers that beat and buffet them, even with such a roar did the Trojans come on. But the Achaeans, in singleness of heart, stood firm about the son of Menoetius, and fenced him with their bronze shields. Jove, moreover, hid the brightness of their helmets in a thick cloud, for he had borne no grudge against the son of Menoetius while he was still alive and squire to the descendant of Asus. Therefore he was loath to let him fall a prey to the dogs of his foes the Trojans, and urged his comrades on to defend him. At first the Trojans drove the Achaeans back, and they withdrew from the dead man daunted. The Trojans did not succeed in killing anyone. Nevertheless they drew the body away. But the Achaeans did not lose it long, for Ajax, foremost of all the Danaans after the son of Peleus, alike in stature and prowess, quickly rallied them and made towards the front like a wild boar upon the mountains when he stands at bay in the forest glades and routs the hounds and lusty youths that have attacked him. Even so did Ajax, son of Telamon, passing easily in among the phalanxes of the Trojans, disperse those who had bestridden Patroclus and were most bent on winning glory by dragging him off to their city. At this moment Hippothous, brave son of the Pelasgian Lethus, in his zeal for Hector and the Trojans, was dragging the body off by the foot through the press of the fight, having bound a strap round the sinews near the ankle. But a mischief soon befell him, from which none of those could save him who would have gladly done so, for the son of Telamon sprang forward and smote him on his bronze-cheeked helmet. The plumed headpiece broke about the point of the weapon, struck at once by the spear and by the strong hand of Ajax, so that the bloody brain came oozing out through the crest-socket. His strength then failed him, and he let Patroclus's foot drop from his hand as he fell full length dead upon the body. Thus he died far from the fertile land of Larissa, and never repaid his parents the cost of bringing him up, for his life was cut short early by the spear of mighty Ajax. Hector then took aim at Ajax with a spear, but he saw it coming and just managed to avoid it. The spear passed on and struck Schedius, son of noble Iphitus, captain of the Phocians, who dwelt in famed Panopeus and reigned over much people. It struck him under the middle of the collarbone. The bronze point went right through him, coming out at the bottom of his shoulder blade, and his armour rang rattling round him as he fell heavily to the ground. Ajax in his turn struck noble Phorcys, son of Phaenops, in the middle of the belly as he was bestriding Hippothous, and broke the plate of his cuirass, whereon the spear tore out his entrails, and he clutched the ground in his palm as he fell to earth. Hector and those who were in the front rank then gave ground, while the Argives raised a loud cry of triumph, and drew off the bodies of Phorcys and Hippothous, which they stripped presently of their armour. The Trojans would now have been worsted by the brave Achaeans, and driven back to Iliad through their own cowardice, while the Argives, so great was their courage and endurance, would have achieved a triumph even against the will of Jove, if Apollo had not roused Aeneas in the likeness of Periphas, son of Epetus, an attendant who had grown old in the service of Aeneas's aged father, and was at all times devoted to him. In his likeness, then, Apollo said, "Aeneas, can you not manage, even though heaven be against us, to save high Ilias? I have known men whose numbers, courage, and self-reliance have saved their people in spite of Jove, whereas in this case he would much rather give victory to us than to the Danaans, if you would only fight instead of being so terribly afraid." Aeneas knew Apollo when he looked straight at him, and shouted to Hector, saying, "Hector and all other Trojans and allies, shame on us if we are beaten by the Achaeans and driven back to Iliad through our own cowardice. A god has just come up to me and told me that Jove, the supreme disposer, will be with us. Therefore let us make for the Danaans, that it may go hard with them ere they bear away dead Patroclus to the ships." As he spoke, he sprang out far in front of the others, who then rallied and again faced the Achaeans. Aeneas speared Leocritus, son of Arispus, a valiant follower of Lycomedes, and Lycomedes was moved with pity as he saw him fall. He therefore went close up and speared Apisaon, son of Hippasus, shepherd of his people, in the liver under the midriff, so that he died. He had come from fertile Paeonia, and was the best man of them all after Asteropaeus. Asteropaeus flew forward to avenge him and attack the Danaans, but this might no longer be, inasmuch as those about Patroclus were well covered by their shields, and held their spears in front of them, for Ajax had given them strict orders that no man was either to give ground or to stand out before the others, but all were to hold well together about the body, and fight hand to hand. Thus did huge Ajax bid them, and the earth ran red with blood, as the corpses fell thick on one another, alike on the side of the Trojans and allies, and on that of the Danaans. For these last too fought no bloodless fight, though many fewer of them perished, through the care they took to defend and stand by one another. Thus did they fight as it were of flaming fire. It seemed as though it had gone hard even with the sun and moon, for they were hidden over all that part where the bravest heroes were fighting about the dead son of Menoetius, whereas the other Danaans and Achaeans fought at their ease in full daylight, with brilliant sunshine all round them, and there was not a cloud to be seen, neither on plain nor mountain. These last, moreover, would rest for a while and leave off fighting, for they were some distance apart and beyond the range of one another's weapons, whereas those who were in the thick of the fray suffered from both battle and darkness. All the best of them were being worn out by the great weight of their armour, but the two valiant heroes, Thrasymedes and Antilochus, had not yet heard of the death of Patroclus, and believed him to be still alive and leading the van against the Trojans. They were keeping themselves in reserve against the death or rout of their own comrades, for so Nestor had ordered them when he sent them from the ships into battle. Thus through the livelong day did they wage fierce war, and the sweat of their toil rained ever on their legs under them, and on their hands and eyes, as they fought over the squire of the fleet son of Peleus. It was as when a man gives a great ox hide all drenched in fat to his men, and bids them stretch it, whereon they stand round it in a ring, and tug till the moisture leaves it, and the fat soaks in for the many that pull at it, and it is well stretched. Even so did the two sides tug the dead body hither and thither within the compass of but a little space, the Trojans steadfastly set on dragging it into Ilios, while the Achaeans were no less so on taking it to their ships, and fierce was the fight between them. Not Mars himself, the Lord of hosts, nor yet Minerva, even in their fullest fury, could make light of such a battle. Such fearful turmoil of men and horses did Jove on that day ordain round the body of Patroclus. Meanwhile Achilles did not know that he had fallen, for the fight was under the wall of Troy, a long way off the ships. He had no idea, therefore, that Patroclus was dead, and deemed that he would return alive as soon as he had gone close up to the gates. He knew that he was not to sack the city, neither with nor without himself, for his mother had often told him this when he had sat alone with her, and she had informed him of the counsels of great Jove. Now, however, she had not told him how great a disaster had befallen him in the death of the one who was far dearest to him of all his comrades. The others still kept on charging one another round the body with their pointed spears, and killing each other. Then one would say, "My friends, we can never again show our faces at the ships. Better, and greatly better, that earth should open and swallow us here in this place, than that we should let the Trojans have the triumph of bearing off Patroclus to their city." The Trojans also on their part spoke to one another, saying, "Friends, though we fall to a man beside this body, let none shrink from fighting." With such words did they exhort each other. They fought, and an iron clank rose through the void air to the brazen vault of heaven. The horses of the descendant of Asus stood out of the fight, and wept when they heard that their driver had been laid low by the hand of murderous Hector. Automedon, valiant son of Diores, lashed them again and again. Many a time did he speak kindly to them, and many a time did he upbraid them, but they would neither go back to the ships by the waters of the broad Hellespont, nor yet into battle among the Achaeans. They stood with their chariots stock still, as a pillar set over the tomb of some dead man or woman, and bowed their heads to the ground. Hot tears fell from their eyes as they mourned the loss of their charioteer, and their noble manes drooped all wet from under the yoke straps on either side of the yoke. The son of Saturn saw them, and took pity upon their sorrow. He wagged his head, and muttered to himself, saying, "Poor things, why did we give you to King Peleus, who is immortal, while you are yourselves ageless and immortal? Was it that you might share the sorrows that befall mankind? For of all creatures that live and move upon the earth, there is none so pitiable as he is. Still, Hector, son of Priam, shall drive neither you nor your chariot. I will not have it. It is enough that he should have the armour over which he vaunts so vainly. Furthermore, I will give you strength of heart and limb to bear Automedon safely to the ships from battle, for I shall let the Trojans triumph still further, and go on killing till they reach the ships, whereon night shall fall, and darkness overshadow the land." As he spoke, he breathed heart and strength into the horses, so that they shook the dust from out of their manes, and bore their chariots swiftly into the fight that raged between Trojans and Achaeans. Behind them fought Automedon, full of sorrow for his comrade, as a vulture amid a flock of geese. In and out, and here and there, full speed he dashed amid the throng of the Trojans, but for all the fury of his pursuit he killed no man, for he could not wield his spear and keep his horses in hand when alone in the chariot. At last, however, a comrade, Alcimedon, son of Laerces, son of Haemon, caught sight of him and came up behind his chariot. "Automedon," said he, "what god has put this folly into your heart, and robbed you of your right mind, that you fight the Trojans in the front rank single-handed? He who was your comrade is slain, and Hector plumes himself on being armed in the armour of the descendant of Asus." Automedon, son of Diores, answered, "Alcimedon, there is no one else who can control and guide the immortal steer so well as you can, save only Patroclus, while he was alive, peer of gods in council. Take then the whip and reins, while I go down from the car and fight." Alcimedon sprang onto the chariot and caught up the whip and reins, while Automedon leapt from off the car. When Hector saw him, he said to Aeneas, who was near him, "Aeneas, counsellor of the mail-clad Trojans, I see the steeds of the fleet son of Asus come into battle with weak hands to drive them. I am sure, if you think well, that we might take them. They will not dare face us if we both attack them." The valiant son of Anchises was of the same mind, and the pair went right on, with their shoulders covered with shields of tough, dry ox-hide, overlaid with much bronze. Chromius and Aretus went also with them, and their hearts beat high with hope that they might kill the men and capture the horses. Fools that they were, for they were not to return scatheless from their meeting with Automedon, who prayed to Father Jove, and was forthwith filled with courage and strength abounding. He turned to his trusty commander, Alcimedon, and said, "Alcimedon, keep your horses so close up that I may feel their breath upon my back. I doubt that we shall not stay Hector, son of Priam, till he has killed us and mounted behind the horses. He will then either spread panic among the ranks of the Achaeans, or himself be killed among the foremost." On this he cried out to the two Ajaxes and Menelaus, "Ajaxes, captains of the Argives, and Menelaus, give the dead body over to them that are best able to defend it, and come to the rescue of us living. For Hector and Aeneas, who are the two best men among the Trojans, are pressing us hard in the full tide of war. Nevertheless, the issue lies on the lap of heaven. I will therefore hurl my spear, and leave the rest to Jove." He poised and hurled as he spoke, whereon the spear struck the round shield of Aretus, and went right through it, for the shield stayed it not, so that it was driven through his belt into the lower part of his belly. As when some sturdy youth, axe in hand, deals his blow behind the horns of an ox, and severs the tendons at the back of its neck, so that it springs forward and then drops, even so did Aretus give one bound, and then fall on his back, the spear quivering in his body, till it made an end of him. Hector then aimed a spear at Automedon, but he saw it coming and stooped forward to avoid it, so that it flew past him, and the point stuck in the ground, while the butt end went on quivering till Mars robbed it of its force. They would then have fought hand to hand with swords, had not the two Ajaxes forced their way through the crowd when they heard their comrades calling, and parted them for all their fury. For Hector, Aeneas, and Chromius were afraid, and drew back, leaving Aretus to lie there struck to the heart. Automedon, peer of fleet Mars, then stripped him of his armour, and vaunted over him, saying, "I have done little to assuage my sorrow for the son of Menoetius, for the man I have killed is not so good as he was." As he spoke, he took the blood-stained spoils and laid them upon his chariot. Then he mounted the car with his hands and feet all steeped in gore, as a lion that has been gorging upon a bull. And now the fierce, groanful fight again raged about Patroclus, for Minerva came down from heaven and roused its fury by the command of far-seeing Jove, who had changed his mind and sent her to encourage the Danaans. As when Jove bends his bright bow in heaven in token to mankind either of war or of the chill storms that stay men from their labour and plague the flocks, even so, wrapped in such radiant raiment, did Minerva go in among the host, and speak man by man to each. First she took the form and voice of Phoenix, and spoke to Menelaus, son of Atreus, who was standing near her. "Menelaus," said she, "it will be shame and dishonour to you if dogs tear the noble comrade of Achilles under the walls of Troy. Therefore be staunch, and urge your men to be so also." Menelaus answered, "Phoenix, my good old friend, may Minerva vouchsafe me strength and keep the darts from off me, for so shall I stand by Patroclus and defend him. His death has gone to my heart, but Hector is as a raging fire, and deals his blows without ceasing, for Jove is now granting him a time of triumph." Minerva was pleased at his having named herself before any of the other gods. Therefore she put strength into his knees and shoulders, and made him as bold as a fly, which, though driven off, will yet come again, and bite if it can, so dearly does it love man's blood. Even so bold as this did she make him, as he stood over Patroclus and threw his spear. Now there was among the Trojans a man named Podes, son of Eetion, who was both rich and valiant. Hector held him in the highest honour, for he was his comrade and boon companion. The spear of Menelaus struck this man in the girdle, just as he had turned in flight, and went right through him, whereon he fell heavily forward, and Menelaus, son of Atreus, drew off his body from the Trojans into the ranks of his own people. Apollo then went up to Hector and spurred him on to fight in the likeness of Phaenops, son of Asius, who lived in Abydos and was the most favoured of all Hector's guests. In his likeness Apollo said, "Hector, who of the Achaeans will fear you henceforward now that you have quailed before Menelaus, who has ever been rated poorly as a soldier? Yet now he has got a corpse away from the Trojans single-handed, and has slain your own true comrade, a man brave among the foremost, Podes, son of Aetion." A dark cloud of grief fell upon Hector as he heard, and he made his way to the front clad in full armour. Thereon the son of Saturn seized his bright tasselled aegis and veiled Ida in clouds. He sent forth his lightnings and his thunders, and as he shook his aegis he gave victory to the Trojans and routed the Achaeans. The panic was begun by Peneleos the Boeotian, for while keeping his face turned ever towards the foe, he had been hit with a spear on the upper part of his shoulder. A spear thrown by Polydamas had grazed the top of the bone, for Polydamas had come up to him and struck him from close at hand. Then Hector, in close combat, struck Laetus, son of noble Electryon, in the hand by the wrist, and disabled him from fighting further. He looked about him in dismay, knowing that never again would he wield spear in battle with the Trojans. While Hector was in pursuit of Laetus, Idomeneus struck him on the breastplate over his chest near the nipple, but the spear broke in the shaft, and the Trojans cheered aloud. Hector then aimed at Idomeneus, son of Deucalion, as he was standing on his chariot, and very narrowly missed him. But the spear hit Coiranus, a follower and charioteer of Meriones, who had come with him from Lyctus. Idomeneus had left the ships on foot, and would have afforded a great triumph to the Trojans if Coiranus had not driven quickly up to him. He therefore brought life and rescue to Idomeneus, but himself fell by the hand of murderous Hector. For Hector hit him on the jaw under the ear. The end of the spear drove out his teeth and cut his tongue in 2 pieces, so that he fell from his chariot and let the reins fall to the ground. Meriones gathered them up from the ground and took them into his own hands, but he said to Idomeneus, "Lay on till you get back to the ships, for you must see that the day is no longer ours." On this Idomeneus lashed the horses to the ships, for fear had taken hold upon him. Ajax and Menelaus noted how Jove had turned the scale in favour of the Trojans, and Ajax was first to speak. "Alas," said he, "even a fool may see that Father Jove is helping the Trojans. All their weapons strike home. No matter whether it be a brave man or a coward that hurls them, Jove speeds all alike, whereas ours fall each one of them without effect. What then will be best both as regards rescuing the body and our return to the joy of our friends, who will be grieving as they look hitherwards? For they will make sure that nothing can now check the terrible hands of Hector, and that he will fling himself upon our ships. I wish that someone would go and tell the son of Peleus at once, for I do not think he can have yet heard the sad news that the dearest of his friends has fallen. But I can see not a man among the Achaeans to send, for they and their chariots are alike hidden in darkness. O Father Jove, lift this cloud from over the sons of the Achaeans. Make heaven serene, and let us see, if you will, that we perish. Let us fall, at any rate, by daylight." Father Jove heard him and had compassion upon his tears. Forthwith he chased away the cloud of darkness, so that the sun shone out, and all the fighting was revealed. Ajax then said to Menelaus, "Look, Menelaus, and if Antilochus, son of Nestor, be still living, send him at once to tell Achilles that by far the dearest to him of all his comrades has fallen." Menelaus heeded his words and went his way as a lion from a stockyard. The lion is tired of attacking the men and hounds, who keep watch the whole night through, and will not let him feast on the fat of their herd. In his lust of meat he makes straight at them, but in vain, for darts from strong hands assail him, and burning brands which daunt him for all his hunger, so in the morning he slinks sulkily away. Even so did Menelaus, sorely against his will, leave Patroclus, in great fear lest the Achaeans should be driven back in rout, and let him fall into the hands of the foe. He charged Meriones and the 2 Ajaxes straightly, saying, "Ajaxes and Meriones, leaders of the Argives, now indeed remember how good Patroclus was. He was ever courteous while alive. Bear it in mind now that he is dead." With this Menelaus left them, looking round him as keenly as an eagle, whose sight, they say, is keener than that of any other bird. However high he may be in the heavens, not a hare that runs can escape him by crouching under bush or thicket, for he will swoop down upon it and make an end of it. Even so, O Menelaus, did your keen eyes range round the mighty host of your followers to see if you could find the son of Nestor still alive. Presently Menelaus saw him on the extreme left of the battle, cheering on his men and exhorting them to fight boldly. Menelaus went up to him and said, "Antilochus, come here and listen to sad news, which I would indeed were untrue. You must see with your own eyes that heaven is heaping calamity upon the Danaans and giving victory to the Trojans. Patroclus has fallen, who is the bravest of the Achaeans, and sorely will the Danaans miss him. Run instantly to the ships and tell Achilles that he may come to rescue the body and bear it to the ships. As for the armour, Hector already has it." Antilochus was struck with horror. For a long time he was speechless. His eyes filled with tears, and he could find no utterance. But he did as Menelaus had said, and set off running as soon as he had given his armour to a comrade, Laodocus, who was wheeling his horses round close behind him. Thus then did he run weeping from the field, to carry the bad news to Achilles, son of Peleus. Nor were you, O Menelaus, minded to succour his harassed comrades when Antilochus had left the Pylians, and greatly did they miss him. But he sent them noble Thrasymedes, and himself went back to Patroclus. He came running up to the two Ajaxes and said, "I have sent Antilochus to the ships to tell Achilles, but rage against Hector as he may, he cannot come, for he cannot fight without armour. What then will be our best plan, both as regards rescuing the dead and our own escape from death amid the battle cries of the Trojans?" Ajax answered, "Menelaus, you have said well. Do you then and Meriones stoop down, raise the body, and bear it out of the fray, while we two behind you keep off Hector and the Trojans, one in heart as in name, and long used to fighting side by side with one another." On this Menelaus and Meriones took the dead man in their arms and lifted him high aloft with a great effort. The Trojan host raised a hue and cry behind them when they saw the Achaeans bearing the body away, and flew after them like hounds attacking a wounded boar at the loo of a band of young huntsmen. For a while the hounds fly at him as though they would tear him in pieces, but now and again he turns on them in a fury, scaring and scattering them in all directions. Even so did the Trojans for a while charge in a body, striking with sword and with spears pointed at both the ends, but when the two Ajaxes faced them and stood at bay, they would turn pale, and no man dared press on to fight further about the dead. In this wise did the two heroes strain every nerve to bear the body to the ships out of the fight. The battle raged round them like fierce flames that when once kindled spread like wildfire over a city, and the houses fall in the glare of its burning. Even such was the roar and tramp of men and horses that pursued them as they bore Patroclus from the field, or as mules that put forth all their strength to draw some beam or great piece of ship's timber down a rough mountain track, and they pant and sweat as they go. Even so did Menelaus and Meriones pant and sweat as they bore the body of Patroclus. Behind them the two Ajaxes held stoutly out. As some wounded mountain spur that stretches across a plain will turn water and check the flow even of a great river, nor is there any stream strong enough to break through it, even so did the two Ajaxes face the Trojans and stem the tide of their fighting, though they kept pouring on towards them, and foremost among them all was Aeneas, son of Anchises, with valiant Hector. As a flock of daws or starlings fall to screaming and chattering when they see a falcon, foe to all small birds, come soaring near them, even so did the Achaean youth raise a babel of cries as they fled before Aeneas and Hector, unmindful of their former prowess. In the rout of the Danaans much goodly armour fell round about the trench, and of fighting there was no end. The grief of Achilles over Patroclus, the visit of Thetis to Vulcan, and the armour that he made for Achilles. Thus then did they fight as it were a flaming fire. Meanwhile the fleet runner Antilochus, who had been sent as messenger, reached Achilles, and found him sitting by his tall ships, and boding that which was indeed too surely true. Alas, said he to himself in the heaviness of his heart, why are the Achaeans again scouring the plain and flocking towards the ships? Heaven grant the gods be not now bringing that sorrow upon me of which my mother Thetis spoke, saying that while I was yet alive the bravest of the Myrmidons should fall before the Trojans, and see the light of the sun no longer. I fear the brave son of Menoetius has fallen through his own daring, and yet I bade him return to the ships as soon as he had driven back those that were bringing fire against them, and not join battle with Hector. As he was thus pondering, the son of Nestor came up to him and told his sad tale, weeping bitterly the while. Alas, he cried, son of noble Peleus, I bring you bad tidings. Would indeed that they were untrue. Patroclus has fallen, and a fight is raging about his naked body, for Hector holds his armour. A dark cloud of grief fell upon Achilles as he listened. He filled both hands with dust from off the ground, and poured it over his head, disfiguring his comely face, and letting the refuse settle over his shirt, so fair and new. He flung himself down, all huge and hugely at full length, and tore his hair with his hands. The bondswomen whom Achilles and Patroclus had taken captive screamed aloud for grief, beating their breasts and with their limbs failing them for sorrow. Antilochus bent over him the while, weeping and holding both his hands as he lay groaning, for he feared that he might plunge a knife into his own throat. Then Achilles gave a loud cry, and his mother heard him as she was sitting in the depths of the sea by the old man her father, whereon she screamed, and all the goddesses, daughters of Nereus, that dwelt at the bottom of the sea, came gathering round her. There were Glauce, Thalia, and Comodoce, Nisaea, Spao, Thoe, and dark-haired Hylaea, Cymothoe, Actaea, and Limnoria, Melite, Hiera, Amphitoe, and Argive, Doto and Proto, Pharusa and Dynamene, Dexamene, Amphilomene, and Calianaera, Doris, Panope, and the famous sea nymph Galatea, Nemertes, Aspudes, and Calianassa. There were also Clymene, Ionaira, and Ionassa, Maera, Oretuia, and Amathea of the lovely locks, with other Nereids who dwelt in the depths of the sea. The crystal cave was filled with their multitude, and they all beat their breasts while Thetis led them in their lament. "Listen," she cried, "sisters, daughters of Nereus, that you may hear the burden of my sorrows. Alas, woe is me! Woe in that I have borne the most glorious of offspring. I bore him fair and strong, hero among heroes, and he shot up as a sapling. I tended him as a plant in a goodly garden, and sent him with his ships to Iliad to fight the Trojans, but never shall I welcome him back to the house of Peleus. So long as he lives to look upon the light of the sun, he is in heaviness, and though I go to him, I cannot help him. Nevertheless I will go, that I may see my dear son, and learn what sorrow has befallen him, though he is still holding aloof from battle." She left the cave as she spoke, while the others followed weeping after, and the waves opened a path before them. When they reached the rich plain of Troy, they came out of the sea in a long line on the sands, at the place where the ships of the Myrmidons were drawn up in close order round the tents of Achilles. His mother went up to him as he lay groaning. She laid her hand upon his head and spoke piteously, saying, "My son, why are you thus weeping? What sorrow has now befallen you? Tell me, hide it not from me. Surely Jove has granted you the prayer you made him when you lifted up your hands and besought him that the Achaeans might all of them be pent up at their ships and rue it bitterly in that you were no longer with them." Achilles groaned and answered, "Mother, Olympian Jove has indeed vouchsafed me the fulfilment of my prayer, but what boots it to me, seeing that my dear comrade Patroclus has fallen, he whom I valued more than all others, and loved as dearly as my own life? I have lost him, ay, and Hector, when he killed him, stripped the wondrous armour, so glorious to behold, which the gods gave to Peleus when they laid you in the couch of a mortal man. Would that you were still dwelling among the immortal sea nymphs, and that Peleus had taken to himself some mortal bride. For now you shall have grief infinite by reason of the death of that son whom you can never welcome home. Nay, I will not go to live, nor go about among mankind, unless Hector fall by my spear, and thus pay me for having slain Patroclus, son of Menoetius." Thetis wept and answered, "Then, my son, is your end near at hand, for your own death awaits you full soon after that of Hector." Then said Achilles in his great grief, "I would die here and now, in that I could not save my comrade. He has fallen far from home, and in his hour of need my hand was not there to help him. What is there for me? Return to my own land I shall not, and I have brought no saving, neither to Patroclus nor to my other comrades, of whom so many have been slain by mighty Hector. I stay here by my ships, a bootless burden upon the earth. I, who in fight have no peer among the Achaeans, though in council there are better than I. Therefore perish strife both from among gods and men, and anger, wherein even a righteous man will harden his heart, which rises up in the soul of a man like smoke, and the taste thereof is sweeter than drops of honey. Even so as Agamemnon angered me, and yet so be it, for it is over. I will force my soul into subjection, as I needs must. I will go. I will pursue Hector, who has slain him whom I loved so dearly, and will then abide my doom when it may please Jove and the other gods to send it. Even Hercules, the best beloved of Jove, even he could not escape the hand of death, but fate and Juno's fierce anger laid him low, as I too shall lie when I am dead, if a like doom awaits me. Till then I will win fame, and will bid Trojan and Dardanian women wring tears from their tender cheeks with both their hands in the grievousness of their great sorrow. Thus shall they know that he who has held aloof so long will hold aloof no longer. Hold me not back, therefore, in the love you bear me, for you shall not move me." Then silver-footed Thetis answered, "My son, what you have said is true. It is well to save your comrades from destruction, but your armour is in the hands of the Trojans. Hector bears it in triumph upon his own shoulders. Full well I know that his vaunt shall not be lasting, for his end is close at hand. Go not, however, into the press of battle till you see me return hither. Tomorrow at break of day I shall be here, and will bring you goodly armour from King Vulcan." On this she left her brave son, and as she turned away she said to the sea nymphs, her sisters, "Dive into the bosom of the sea, and go to the house of the old sea god, my father. Tell him everything. As for me, I will go to the cunning workman Vulcan on high Olympus, and ask him to provide my son with a suit of splendid armour." When she had so said, they dived forthwith beneath the waves, while silver-footed Thetis went her way, that she might bring the armour for her son. Thus then did her feet bear the goddess to Olympus, and meanwhile the Achaeans were flying with loud cries before murderous Hector, till they reached the ships and the Hellespont, and they could not draw the body of Mars' servant Patroclus out of reach of the weapons that were showered upon him, for Hector son of Priam, with his host and horsemen, had again caught up to him like the flame of a fiery furnace. Thrice did brave Hector seize him by the feet, striving with might and main to draw him away, and calling loudly on the Trojans. And thrice did the two Ajaxes, clothed in valour as with a garment, beat him from off the body, but all undaunted he would now charge into the thick of the fight, and now again he would stand still and cry aloud, but he would give no ground. As upland shepherds that cannot chase some famished lion from a carcass, even so could not the two Ajaxes scare Hector son of Priam from the body of Patroclus. And now he would even have dragged it off and won imperishable glory, had not Iris, fleet as the wind, winged her way as messenger from Olympus to the son of Peleus, and bidden him arm. She came secretly, without the knowledge of Jove and of the other gods, for Juno sent her, and when she had got close to him, she said, "Up, son of Peleus, mightiest of all mankind! Rescue Patroclus, about whom this fearful fight is now raging by the ships. Men are killing one another, the Danaans in defence of the dead body, while the Trojans are trying to hale it away and take it to windy Ilius. Hector is the most furious of them all. He is for cutting the head from the body and fixing it on the stakes of the wall. Up then, and bide here no longer. Shrink from the thought that Patroclus may become meat for the dogs of Troy. Shame on you, should his body suffer any kind of outrage." And Achilles said, "Iris, which of the gods was it that sent you to me?" Iris answered, "It was Juno, the royal spouse of Jove, but the son of Saturn does not know of my coming, nor yet does any other of the immortals who dwell on the snowy summits of Olympus." Then fleet Achilles answered her, saying, "How can I go into the battle? They have my armour. My mother forbade me to arm till I should see her come, for she promised to bring me goodly armour from Vulcan. I know no man whose arm I can put on, save only the shield of Ajax, son of Telamon, and he surely must be fighting in the front rank, and wielding his spear about the body of dead Patroclus." Iris said, "We know that your armour has been taken, but go as you are. Go to the deep trench and show yourself before the Trojans, that they may fear you and cease fighting. Thus will the fainting sons of the Achaeans gain some brief breathing time, which in battle may hardly be." Iris left him when she had so spoken. But Achilles, dear to Jove, arose, and Minerva flung her tasselled aegis round his strong shoulders. She crowned his head with a halo of golden cloud, from which he kindled a glow of gleaming fire. As the smoke that goes up into heaven from some city that is being beleaguered on an island far out at sea, all day long do men sally from the city and fight their hardest, and at the going down of the sun the line of beacon fires blazes forth, flaring high for those that dwell near them to behold, if so be that they may come with their ships and succour them. Even so did the light flare from the head of Achilles as he stood by the trench, going beyond the wall. But he did not join the Achaeans, for he heeded the charge which his mother laid upon him. There did he stand and shout aloud. Minerva also raised her voice from afar, and spread terror unspeakable among the Trojans. Ringing as the note of a trumpet that sounds alarm when the foe is at the gates of a city, even so brazen was the voice of the son of Aesus, and when the Trojans heard its clarion tones they were dismayed. The horses turned back with the chariots, for they boded mischief, and their drivers were awestruck by the steady flame which the grey-eyed goddess had kindled above the head of the great son of Peleus. Thrice did Achilles raise his loud cry as he stood by the trench, and thrice were the Trojans and their brave allies thrown into confusion, whereon 12 of their noblest champions fell beneath the wheels of their chariots and perished by their own spears. The Achaeans, to their great joy, then drew Patroclus out of reach of the weapons and laid him on a litter. His comrades stood mourning round him, and among them fleet Achilles, who wept bitterly as he saw his true comrade lying dead upon his bier. He had sent him out with horses and chariots into battle, but his return he was not to welcome. Then Juno sent the busy sun, loth though he was, into the waters of Oceanus. So he set, and the Achaeans had rest from the tug and turmoil of war. Now the Trojans, when they had come out of the fight, unyoked their horses and gathered in assembly before preparing their supper. They kept their feet, nor would any dare to sit down, for fear had fallen upon them all, because Achilles had shown himself, after having held aloof so long from battle. Polydamas, son of Panthous, was first to speak, a man of judgment, who alone among them could look both before and after. He was comrade to Hector, and they had been born upon the same night. With all sincerity and goodwill, therefore, he addressed them thus: "Look to it well, my friends. I would urge you to go back now to your city, and not wait here by the ships till morning, for we are far from our walls. So long as this man was at enmity with Agamemnon, the Achaeans were easier to deal with, and I would have gladly camped by the ships in the hope of taking them. But now I go in great fear of the fleet son of Peleus. He is so daring that he will never abide here on the plain whereon the Trojans and Achaeans fight with equal valour, but he will try to storm our city and carry off our women. Do then as I say, and let us retreat. For this is what will happen. The darkness of night will for a time stay the son of Peleus, but if he find us here in the morning, when he sallies forth in full armour, we shall have knowledge of him in good earnest. Glad indeed will he be who can escape and get back to Ilius, and many a Trojan will become meat for dogs and vultures, may I never live to hear it. If we do as I say, little though we may like it, we shall have strength in council during the night, and the great gates with the doors that close them will protect the city. At dawn we can arm and take our stand on the walls. He will then rue it if he sallies from the ships to fight us. He will go back when he has given his horses their fill of being driven all withers under our walls, and will be in no mind to try and force his way into the city. Neither will he ever sack it. Dogs shall devour him ere he do so." Hector looked fiercely at him and answered, "Polydamas, your words are not to my liking, in that you bid us go back and be pent within the city. Have you not had enough of being cooped up behind walls? In the old days the city of Priam was famous the whole world over for its wealth of gold and bronze, but our treasures are wasted out of our houses, and much goods have been sold away to Phrygia and fair Maeonia, for the hand of Jove has been laid heavily upon us. Now, therefore, that the son of scheming Saturn has vouchsafed me to win glory here, and to hem the Achaeans in at their ships, prate no more in this fool's wise among the people. You will have no man with you. It shall not be. Do all of you as I now say. Take your suppers in your companies throughout the host, and keep your watches, and be wakeful every man of you. If any Trojan is uneasy about his possessions, let him gather them and give them out among the people. Better let these, rather than the Achaeans, have them. At daybreak we will arm, and fight about the ships. Granted that Achilles has again come forward to defend them, let it be as he will, but it shall go hard with him. I shall not shun him, but will fight him, to fall or conquer. The god of war deals out like measure to all, and the slayer may yet be slain." Thus spoke Hector, and the Trojans, fools that they were, shouted in applause, for Pallas Minerva had robbed them of their understanding. They gave ear to Hector with his evil counsel, but the wise words of Polydamas no man would heed. They took their supper throughout the host, and meanwhile through the whole night the Achaeans mourned Patroclus, and the son of Peleus led them in their lament. He laid his murderous hands upon the breast of his comrade, groaning again and again as the bearded lion when a man who was chasing deer has robbed him of his young in some dense forest. When the lion comes back he is furious, and searches dingle and dell to track the hunter if he can find him, for he is mad with rage. Even so with many a sigh did Achilles speak among the Myrmidons, saying, "Alas, vain were the words with which I cheered the hero Menoetius in his own house. I said that I would bring his brave son back again to Opoesus after he had sacked Ilias and taken his share of the spoils. But Jove does not give all men their heart's desire. The same soil shall be reddened here at Troy by the blood of us both, for I too shall never be welcomed home by the old knight Peleus, nor by my mother Thetis, but even in this place shall the earth cover me. Nevertheless, O Patroclus, now that I am left behind you, I will not bury you till I have brought hither the head and armour of mighty Hector, who has slain you. 12 noble sons of Trojans will I behead before your bier to avenge you. Till I have done so, you shall lie as you are by the ships, and fair women of Troy and Dardanus, whom we have taken with spear and strength of arm when we sacked men's goodly cities, shall weep over you both night and day." Then Achilles told his men to set a large tripod upon the fire, that they might wash the clotted gore from off Patroclus. Thereon they set a tripod full of bath water onto a clear fire. They threw sticks on it to make it blaze, and the water became hot as the flame played about the belly of the tripod. When the water in the cauldron was boiling, they washed the body, anointed it with oil, and closed its wounds with ointments that had been kept 9 years. Then they laid it on a bier, and covered it with a linen cloth from head to foot, and over this they laid a fair white robe. Thus all night long did the Myrmidons gather round Achilles to mourn Patroclus. Then Jove said to Juno, his sister wife, "So, Queen Juno, you have gained your end, and have roused fleet Achilles. One would think that the Achaeans were of your own flesh and blood." And Juno answered, "Dread son of Saturn, why should you say this thing? May not a man, though he be only mortal and knows less than we do what he can for another person? And shall not I, foremost of all goddesses, both by descent and as wife to you, who reign in heaven, devise evil for the Trojans if I am angry with them?" Thus did they converse. Meanwhile Thetis came to the house of Vulcan, imperishable, star-bespangled, fairest of the abodes in heaven, a house of bronze wrought by the lame god's own hands. She found him busy with his bellows, sweating and hard at work, for he was making 20 tripods that were to stand by the wall of his house, and he set wheels of gold under them all, that they might go of their own selves to the assemblies of the gods, and come back again, marvels indeed to see. They were finished, all but the ears of cunning workmanship which yet remained to be fixed to them. These he was now fixing, and he was hammering at the rivets. While he was thus at work, silver-footed Thetis came to the house. Jairus, of graceful headdress, wife to the far-famed lame god, came towards her as soon as she saw her, and took her hand in her own, saying, "Why have you come to our house, Thetis, honoured and ever welcome? For you do not visit us often. Come inside, and let me set refreshment before you." The goddess led the way as she spoke, and bade Thetis sit on a richly decorated seat, inlaid with silver. There was a footstool also under her feet. Then she called Vulcan and said, "Vulcan, come here. Thetis wants you." And the far-famed lame god answered, "Then it is indeed an august and honoured goddess who has come here. She it was that took care of me when I was suffering from the heavy fall which I had through my cruel mother's anger, for she would have got rid of me because I was lame. It would have gone hard with me had not Eurynome, daughter of the ever-encircling waters of Oceanus, and Thetis, taken me to their bosom. 9 years did I stay with them, and many beautiful works in bronze, brooches, spiral armlets, cups and chains did I make for them in their cave, with the roaring waters of Oceanus foaming as they rushed ever past it. And no one knew, neither of gods nor men, save only Thetis and Eurynome, who took care of me. If, then, Thetis has come to my house, I must make her due requital for having saved me. Entertain her, therefore, with all hospitality, while I put by my bellows and all my tools." On this the mighty monster hobbled off from his anvil, his thin legs plying lustily under him. He set the bellows away from the fire and gathered his tools into a silver chest. Then he took a sponge and washed his face and hands, his shaggy chest and brawny neck. He donned his shirt, grasped his strong staff, and limped towards the door. There were golden handmaids also who worked for him, and were like real young women, with sense and reason, voice also, and strength, and all the learning of the immortals. These busied themselves as the king bade them, while he drew near to Thetis, seated her upon a goodly seat, and took her hand in his own, saying, "Why have you come to our house, Thetis, honoured and ever welcome? For you do not visit us often. Say what you want, and I will do it for you at once, if I can, and if it can be done at all." Thetis wept and answered, "Vulcan, is there another goddess in Olympus whom the son of Saturn has been pleased to try with so much affliction as he has me? Me alone of the marine goddesses did he make subject to a mortal husband, Peleus, son of Aesus, and sorely against my will did I submit to the embraces of one who was but mortal, and who now stays at home, worn out with age. Neither is this all. Heaven vouchsafed me a son, hero among heroes, and he shot up as a sapling. I tended him as a plant in a goodly garden, and sent him with his ships to Iliad to fight the Trojans, but never shall I welcome him back to the house of Peleus. So long as he lives to look upon the light of the sun, he is in heaviness, and though I go to him, I cannot help him. King Agamemnon has made him give up the maiden whom the sons of the Achaeans had awarded him, and he wastes with sorrow for her sake. Then the Trojans hemmed the Achaeans in at their ships' sterns, and would not let them come forth. The elders, therefore, of the Argives besought Achilles, and offered him great treasure, whereon he refused to bring deliverance to them himself, but put his own armour on Patroclus, and sent him into the fight, with much people after him. All day long they fought by the Scaean gates, and would have taken the city there and then, had not Apollo vouchsafed glory to Hector, and slain the valiant son of Menoetius, after he had done the Trojans much evil. Therefore I am suppliant at your knees, if haply you may be pleased to provide my son, whose end is near at hand, with helmet and shield, with goodly greaves fitted with ankle clasps, and with a breastplate, for he has lost his own when his true comrade fell at the hands of the Trojans, and he now lies stretched on earth in the bitterness of his soul." And Vulcan answered, "Take heart, and be no more disquieted about this matter. Would that I could hide him from death's sight when his hour is come, so surely as I can find him armour that shall amaze the eyes of all who behold it." When he had so said, he left her and went to his bellows, turning them towards the fire, and bidding them do their office. 20 bellows blew upon the melting pots, and they blew blasts of every kind, some fierce to help him when he had need of them, and others less strong, as Vulcan willed it in the course of his work. He threw tough copper into the fire, and tin with silver and gold. He set his great anvil on its block, and with one hand grasped his mighty hammer, while he took the tongs in the other. First he shaped the shield, so great and strong, adorning it all over, and binding it round with a gleaming circuit in 3 layers, and the baldric was made of silver. He made the shield in 5 thicknesses, and with many a wonder did his cunning hand enrich it. He wrought the earth, the heavens, and the sea, the moon also at her full, and the untiring sun, with all the signs that glorify the face of heaven, the Pleiades, the Hyades, huge Orion, and the Bear, which men also call the Wain, and which turns round ever in one place, facing Orion, and alone never dips into the stream of Oceanus. He wrought also 2 cities, fair to see, and busy with the hum of men. In the one were weddings and wedding feasts, and they were going about the city with brides, whom they were escorting by torchlight from their chambers. Loud rose the cry of Hymen, and the youths danced to the music of flute and lyre, while the women stood each at her house door to see them. Meanwhile the people were gathered in assembly, for there was a quarrel, and 2 men were wrangling about the blood money for a man who had been killed, the one saying before the people that he had paid damages in full, and the other that he had not been paid. Each was trying to make his own case good, and the people took sides, each man backing the side that he had taken, and the heralds kept them back, and the elders sat on their seats of stone in a solemn circle, holding the staves which the heralds had put into their hands. Then they rose, and each in his turn gave judgment, and there were 2 talents laid down, to be given to him whose judgment should be deemed the fairest. About the other city there lay encamped 2 hosts in gleaming armour, and they were divided whether to sack it or to spare it and accept the half of what it contained. But the men of the city would not yet consent, and armed themselves for a surprise. Their wives and little children kept guard upon the walls, and with them were the men who were past fighting through age. But the others sallied forth with Mars and Pallas Minerva at their head, both of them wrought in gold and clad in golden raiment, great and fair with their armour, as befitting gods, while they that followed were smaller. When they reached the place where they would lay their ambush, it was on a river bed to which livestock of all kinds would come from far and near to water. Here then they lay concealed, clad in full armour. Some way off them there were 2 scouts who were on the lookout for the coming of sheep or cattle, which presently came, followed by 2 shepherds who were playing on their pipes, and had not so much as a thought of danger. When those who were in ambush saw this, they cut off the flocks and herds and killed the shepherds. Meanwhile the besiegers, when they heard much noise among the cattle as they sat in council, sprang to their horses and made with all speed towards them. When they reached them, they set battle in array by the banks of the river, and the hosts aimed their bronze-shod spears at one another. With them was strife and riot, and fell Fate, who was dragging 3 men after her, one with a fresh wound, and the other unwounded, while the third was dead, and she was dragging him along by his heel, and her robe was bedrabbled in men's blood. They went in and out with one another, and fought as though they were living people, haling away one another's dead. He wrought also a fair fallow field, large and thrice ploughed already. Many men were working at the plough within it, turning their oxen to and fro, furrow after furrow. Each time that they turned on reaching the headland, a man would come up to them and give them a cup of wine, and they would go back to their furrows, looking forward to the time when they should again reach the headland. The part that they had ploughed was dark behind them, so that the field, though it was of gold, still looked as if it were being ploughed, very curious to behold. He wrought also a field of harvest corn, and the reapers were reaping with sharp sickles in their hands. Swathe after swathe fell to the ground in a straight line behind them, and the binders bound them in bands of twisted straw. There were 3 binders, and behind them there were boys who gathered the cut corn in armfuls and kept on bringing them to be bound. Among them all the owner of the land stood by in silence and was glad. The servants were getting a meal ready under an oak, for they had sacrificed a great ox and were busy cutting him up, while the women were making a porridge of much white barley for the labourers' dinner. He wrought also a vineyard, golden and fair to see, and the vines were loaded with grapes. The bunches overhead were black, but the vines were trained on poles of silver. He ran a ditch of dark metal all round it, and fenced it with a fence of tin. There was only one path to it, and by this the vintagers went when they would gather the vintage. Youths and maidens, all blithe and full of glee, carried the luscious fruit in plaited baskets, and with them there went a boy who made sweet music with his lyre, and sang the Linos song with his clear boyish voice. He wrought also a herd of horned cattle. He made the cows of gold and tin, and they lowed as they came full speed out of the yards to go and feed among the waving reeds that grow by the banks of the river. Along with the cattle there went 4 shepherds, all of them in gold, and their 9 fleet dogs went with them. 2 terrible lions had fastened on a bellowing bull that was with the foremost cows, and bellow as he might, they hailed him, while the dogs and men gave chase. The lions tore through the bull's thick hide and were gorging on his blood and bowels, but the herdsmen were afraid to do anything, and only hounded on their dogs. The dogs dared not fasten on the lions, but stood by barking and keeping out of harm's way. The god wrought also a pasture in a fair mountain dell, and a large flock of sheep, with a homestead and huts and sheltered sheepfolds. Furthermore he wrought a green like that which Daedalus once made in Knossos for lovely Ariadne. Hereon there danced youths and maidens whom all would woo, with their hands on one another's wrists. The maidens wore robes of light linen, and the youths well-woven shirts that were slightly oiled. The girls were crowned with garlands, while the young men had daggers of gold that hung by silver baldricks. Sometimes they would dance deftly in a ring with merry twinkling feet, as it were a potter sitting at his work and making trial of his wheel to see whether it will run, and sometimes they would go all in line with one another, and much people was gathered joyously about the green. There was a bard also to sing to them and play his lyre, while 2 tumblers went about performing in the midst of them when the man struck up with his tune. All round the outermost rim of the shield he set the mighty stream of the river Oceanus. Then, when he had fashioned the shield so great and strong, he made a breastplate also that shone brighter than fire. He made a helmet close fitting to the brow and richly worked, with a golden plume overhanging it, and he made greaves also of beaten tin. Lastly, when the famed lame god had made all the armour, he took it and set it before the mother of Achilles, whereon she darted like a falcon from the snowy summits of Olympus, and bore away the gleaming armour from the house of Vulcan.